This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Another brand spanking, awesome edition of The Baseline podcast. Because as always, man, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And we're not even in Christmas, but whenever we get our people to jump on board with us to talk about the NBA, man, I'm telling you, it just brings smiles on faces and joys in our hearts, man. And as always, it's just so welcome and apropos that we get to this part of our season of the NBA, discussing stuff going on and having our brother from another mother, our man repping the West like no other. Yay, my man, Mr. Jabari Davis, joining the Baseline NBA podcast with us this week. What is good, JD, man? Welcome back to the fold, my brother.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Hearing you say "yay, yay" each time it makes it all worthwhile. Like even beyond being honored and appreciative to be able to talk some hoops with you guys. I appreciate this, man.
Yeah, and as always, too, my man Shaw. You know what I'm saying? I know he don't need me giving him a yay, but you know what I'm saying. What's good, my brother? What's good?
I'm excited, man. We're basically a month into the season, and this week's show is a great opportunity. And it's always fun when we get to bring JD on when we have kind of like one of our like coveted segments, so to speak. Like it's one thing when we just have our show and we talk our hoops, but when we put a little twist on it, JD always brings an extra flair to that. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this one as always, my guy.
Absolutely, man. So for our listeners, man, this is one of those great episodes that we like to have because we don't often do it, but when we do it, we want to make sure it's been highlighting, the stuff that's obviously going on. And it's great because we get the JD energy added into that. And that is our coveted Talk Ish or Abandon Ship episode, man. And everybody who's been around us knows that basically it's just kind of relitigating some of the things that we may have said. Are we still on our thoughts about what we had said earlier this year before the season started, or is it time for us to start abandoning ship, man? And so this is always a great segment that we like to have because one, it keeps us honest about where those tides have changed possibly. And it also gives you guys and fans and listeners a little bit more about what's taking place already in the first quarter of the NBA season. So as always, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us. As always, get at my man Shaw at The Warren Shaw. You can get at me at GameFace Lead, the show's Twitter handle at www.thebaselinenba.com. Available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. And if you're catching us on the YouTube channel, we'd like to say hello to you and yours. And you see the blue and white logo down in the lower right or lower left-hand corner, however you're watching us. Just know that we rock with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, we run in these content streets. So go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only check us, but also the great content deliverers from the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group be running these content streets. Now, before we get into our coveted Talk Ish or Abandon Ship segment, I had to make sure I get my peoples on real quick to kind of chime in a little bit, because what better way to kind of segue us into the Talk Ish or Abandon Ship than the recent happenings that's been going on right now between our man, you know what I'm saying, Cassius Klay Thompson, you know what I'm saying, who be delivering them body blows on the microphone quite nicely and apropos, and Morant for the Memphis Grizzlies. The people have been paying attention to what's been going on. Klay Thompson is not holding back how he personally feels about Morant, how he personally feels about how the Memphis Grizzlies, speak to him and how they see him, and just the way the whole atmosphere. And I thought it would be apropos for us to be able to have this kind of conversation real quick before we get into the main part of our segment, because I really wanted to get JD and Shaw's thoughts on this. So I'm going to start with you on this, JD, man. Like, to hear Klay Thompson really start airing out and speaking truth in his opinion about how he sees Morant, how he looks at him as not just a basketball talent, but also as a player in the NBA. And then to hear Morant clapping back and the whole situation in and of itself, man, I really wanted to get where your perspective is on this.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where, like, and initially it'll sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but bear with me. I have simultaneously, I have no problem whatsoever with NBA guys going at one another, saying what saying what needs to be said. Also, Klay, like, we can be real about it. At 33 years old, after Achilles surgery, an Achilles rupture, an ACL tear, All of the attrition of, like those deep runs with Golden State. Yeah, obviously he's not the same player that he once was. But sometimes you got to be more aware of of your reality. And if I'm John Morant, I have to look at it like this. Yeah, I might have let my emotions get the best of me, but I'm sorry. It's kind of like that, like, oh, I know you're not talking situation, because it's like, hey, look, if I'm Klay, I look back at John and I say exactly what he did. He did it perfectly. But it's basically like, I might be a has-been, I might not be what I once was, but what are you? What have you done? Where are you in your career? You're still in the in what we would consider hopefully your athletic and a professional prime, and you're not available for your team. And when you are, you're simply not that guy anymore. So again, no disrespect, like intended, but if I'm Ja, honestly, I need to look myself in the mirror and really get myself together, because his numbers have declined the last 3 years. He is not putting up superstar, numbers. Matter of fact, he's not even putting up star numbers. So before I go talking to a 4-time champion, talking to like somebody in that way, putting my finger in his face and all of that, I might want to get myself together.
I think Klay's response, and Klay's had a rough year because obviously the Mavs are not playing well. He specifically is not playing well. So everybody feels like it's time to dance on his grave while he's technically still living and out here in the NBA. But from his girlfriend stuff with Meg Thee Stallion and the Pat Beverly, only for Pat Beverly to get arrested, like I think a week or so later, I don't know. I think fucking with Klay might not be what you want to do. The karma seems to be on his side right now. So who knows what else is coming for John Morant at this stage. I think, JD, you said it, I think, perfectly. At this, Klay has the right. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. John Morant is not that. And we're still waiting. We're still waiting for John Morant to be even a semblance of the player that we thought when we were talking about future faces of the game, best American player, and all of those things. Everything has gone off the tracks for Ja since that time, inclusive of the actual Memphis Grizzlies and their ability to be a competitive team in the Western Conference, and to struggle to beat this Mavs team, which is in disarray. And then you're talking Ish after it. Like, my G, like, just sit this one out, come back to your team and try to do something positive on the court instead of running your mouth. And I know, I'm not trying to talk tough or whatever the case would be. I understand Ja's talent and all of that, but we're at the stage now where it doesn't even matter anymore. Like, you're not doing anything that's productive. And that's what we need to see to kind of get back on the John Morant train.
Yeah. If we're talking real quick here, my thoughts on this is he doesn't understand that this is not a winning situation for him, no matter how you slice it. And the one lasting factor that Ja Morant has left to salvage at this particular stage, which is crazy that we're even talking about this, is the legacy that he has as a star caliber player. Because if he doesn't come back and actually helps to elevate the team that he's playing, no matter where he goes to, those other organizations that you are basically auditioning for, because again, this isn't going to bode well. There's no way that you're going to salvage whatever it is that you can do for the Memphis Grizzlies. At some particular point, something is going to change. But the perception of how they see you as a basketball player will no longer be as a floor general, will no longer be as a true leader to a team. It's going to be, you're a really talented dude, and we're going to try to maximize your talent, which in most cases can mean we're going to use you until you are unusable, which is not a place you want to be for a person of John Morant's, I guess, his total package and resume at this early stage of his career. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate because we can go through a laundry list of a lot of guys who have had immeasurable talent to bring to the table to the NBA, but because they didn't get it right mentally, they didn't get it right in what they should have been bringing to the table as an athlete for the teams that they're playing for, their careers essentially, and the perception of people, how they see them, get cut short very quickly. And that's unfortunate because I think, I'll get to your point, it's not like John Morant's career is over, but clearly the path of his level of greatness is to the point where if you can't even do this right, which is speak to whatever the problems are,
Yeah, I want to interject really quickly. This is not a great comp. JD, you're actually better at comps than I am when it comes to these types of things. But I would say John Morant's career, for whatever player comp he was previously, like maybe Derrick Rose or whatever. I don't know, like all the names that threw out there. He's trending more towards like a Steve Francis, like somebody who was really good for a while. You know what I mean? And had all this talent, but then shit just went left. Like you can't really explain it, but it just didn't really go the way and for the amount of years that you would expect it, especially with the injury stuff. But that's how I'm kind of seeing Ja right now. I don't know. Could you have a comp, Jabari, that you could kind of come up with?
No, I honestly, I don't mind. I like that comparison because, like, if we're being real about it, CV franchise, and okay, and I should make it clear for anybody that may not, know, I was a huge Ja guy. I was pulling for him to be best American player, face of league, guy. So when I say this is not just like I'm not hating on him. It's simply just being disappointed. But the reason why that's an apt comparison is because obviously, franchise had his off the court stuff. He had demons. He had stuff that he was enduring and dealing with. I'm not, I'm not trying to make this into more than what it is. But if I'm Ja Morant and again, he would look at this and say, like, yeah, whatever, he finger gunned me all out of existence. But the reality is this: when you've had the issues, the off court issues that you've had, when you've had the on court issues that you've had, when you've had the availability is the best ability when it comes to professional sports, when you've had the availability issues that you've had, when you've had the issues with back-to-back coaches that you've had, when you have your franchise putting you in a position where they're saying, hey, look, we don't know what else can be done at this stage. Already at this point in your career, again, look yourself in the mirror and recognize when you were pointing your finger saying bum, I know who you were talking to.
Yeah, this is all great stuff, man. And again, I wanted to get your guys' perspective. I hope, and we definitely want our people to let us know. We don't want people to come in with, like what you see basically on some of the most social media outlets, or people are just weighing in on the verbal jabs. I'm taking it from the perspective of Klay Thompson is a Hall of Fame basketball player who, despite everything is going through, is still relevant, even for the team that he struggles with. And when he calls out a star player that he has actual immense respect for from a talent perspective, but he calls him out by saying, you show no intelligent depth. He's speaking more to the fact that you're not even reading the signs properly. And I'm trying to let you know, even coming at me right now is not even good for you. Like, that's saying a lot. And Klay doesn't even have to do that. He could basically be airing them out all day long the same way. But I think it's so frustrating because this has not been the first time that he has had these type of dealings with him and other players from the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think he's at his point where he's like, I'm not even doing this with you because you have nothing to offer me. And I think that's the part that's disappointing in the community of athletes that play within that brotherhood. He's trying to help them out by saying, yo, man, I'm letting you know you're not winning this fight, no matter how much you want to speak to it, because you feel like this is where you need to play this. You're not playing it right.
Can I just piggyback on that just really quickly? Because I actually forgot to mention that specifically. And I'm not saying that he'll be blackballed or anything like that. Ja's still going to be like, people are always going to say, like, until he cannot perform at all, people are always going to be like, I'll kick the tires on that. But keep this in mind. Klay is respected. Klay is a legend. As Warren mentioned, Klay is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's what most, and he's very well, respected and appreciated by people in the league and around the league. So all I'm saying is, if you're a Ja, don't add to the stuff, don't add to the mountain that you're climbing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw and our special guest, Jabari Davis, joining us here, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, it's that coveted time. It's that time we like to grind, baby. It's that talk-ish or abandoned ship segment, man. You do not want to miss out. And just so that you know, this episode of the Baseline NBA podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It all is happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what better way, what gift to buy than to make sure that you're down with the Prize Picks family. This basketball season, I've been having a blast making lineups. It's super simple and quick. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you get them right, you can cash in. You can even use the new stacks feature to pick the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on Steph's points, 3-pointers, and assists. I've been checking out these projections for Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic, and Tyrese Maxey lately. And trust me, seeing your takes hit is the chef's kiss. And let me tell you about this new feature. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out on those winnings before the game even finishes. So what are you waiting for? Download the Prize Picks apps today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Coming up, Shaw I, JD, do a little talk-ish or abandoned ship here on The Baseline. We are back. Callie Warren Shaw, special guest Jabari Davis, a.k.a. JD, in the house. And we are ready to do a little talk-ish or abandoned ship. This is one of our favorite segments, man, because we kind of go back to some of the things that we may have been talking about, whether it be a player, a team, or a specific storyline. And wherever our take was probably back then, are we still on that same pathway, or do we believe it's time for us to abandon ship on it? Now, what makes this awesome is that while JD didn't get to join us in this, he can always keep us honest. Because if there's anybody who is going to keep us honest about our Laker hate, if there's anybody going to keep us honest about our Celtic love, if there's anybody going to keep us honest about our NBA affinity, our man JD. It's like, the perfect therapist and truth serum to make sure that we acting right when we have these kind of conversations. So let's get started, man. Our first topic is going to be for talk-ish or abandon ship. It's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks. And it's interesting because to me, my mentality about the Milwaukee Bucks was that this is a team that is going to have a down year. That while we believe that Giannis is going to carry the heavy lifting, because the identity of this team is so different from what it's been previously, that they are going to struggle to be able to put things together. So I guess the topic of the conversation is do we want to continue to talk that ish about the Milwaukee Bucks having that down year, or given the surprise that the Milwaukee Bucks has kind of shown us, being a above 500 basketball team thus far, given what they reflected, do we abandon ship on that premise? So I'm gonna start with you, Shaw.
I'm gonna jump in. And I think we just need to kind of like re-clarify, because I think more or less we had the Bucks as this kind of middle of the pack team, and it was like, hey, maybe they can knock on the door. But I think when it comes to talking ish or abandon ship, we always knew this was going to be Giannis dependent. If Giannis has to play 36 minutes a night, if Giannis is going to miss 5 to 10 games, 15 games a year, that ultimately is going to tank their overall trajectory. And I think we're at that stage right now with Giannis being on the shelf with another soft tissue injury, which seems to be all the rage in the NBA for the last couple of weeks or whatever the situation is there. Now you're led by Ryan Hollins, who I think is probably a most improved candidate, but he's not somebody who should be leading your basketball team, unfortunately, for the Milwaukee Bucks. So for me,
Shaw, did you say most improved or most improve? Improve who?
a lot of people are learning about Ryan at this point. And at the end of the day, though, for me, I am actually going to abandon ship. And I don't know how long Giannis's injury, and maybe it's bitter prison at the moment, but instead of middle of the pack in the East, I think I'm more comfortable with this is a team that's going to be fighting for the lottery. And fighting for the play-in. I'm sorry. I still think they're going to be very competitive, but saying that they're going to be firmly into that, in that 4, 5, 6 range, I'm just a little bit more dubious, especially because some other teams have taken leaps that I didn't expect, and I don't know if they'll be able to maintain that. But that's where I'm at with Milwaukee. I think they're no longer a middle of the pack team in the East. Giannis' injury, obviously very, very dependent. I'm going to throw them down into the play-in situation. Jabari, your thoughts on Milwaukee coming into the season, whether or not you're going to talk ish or abandon ship on that prediction?
No, I'll be honest with you. With this one, it's real simple. I was right there with you. I thought they were middle of the pack. In fact, I think in our prediction video, I think I said they'll be a 6 seed, maybe somewhere between a 5 and a 7. They'll be competitive, and it was contingent. It was actually during my conversation with Cal. It was contingent upon Giannis being able to be Terminator Giannis, like everything in all things, for all people. And the reality is that's probably too much to ask of him at this stage in his career, especially given the health concerns, given that he is getting up there. He's not old, he's not over it, but he's got enough years in the league where you don't want to have to lean upon him. The reality is this: there was a mediocre roster to begin with. At best, if things worked out perfectly, it would have been like, in that range. But I'm right there with you. I'm going to abandon ship because they have not even been that, right. Quite frankly, right now, they're outside of the play-in. They're outside of it. They're not even in that conference, or in that mode. So look, I'm not saying it's a terrible roster. It's just not anywhere near a competitive and, heaven forbid you call it a championship roster. So if that's the case, if you're Milwaukee, go ahead and figure it out. Go ahead and figure it out. Get Matt cash in, and I know that we've got a section coming later on. I'm not gonna jump the shark, but it's time to go ahead and do the same thing that Warren and I said and jump ship.
Well, I guess I've always been on that ship, right? To talk ish about the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't mind the fact that there's this Terminator version of Giannis Antetokounmpo, because I think we both all knew that was basically what was going to happen, because you never got any kind of talent that alleviated a lot of the things that Giannis is taking upon himself to do. I think the biggest indictment in regards to this, right? And I still see this team probably hanging around because there's just too much winning DNA. I think, to your point, it's the extent of the injury to Giannis. But you didn't shore up the one thing that is forcing Giannis to have to be that guy on everything, is because of what you did in getting Miles Turner. Like, Miles Turner struggling is not even just from him not scoring the basketball consistently, but he gives you nothing in rebounding. He gives you nothing from a defensive standpoint. And that, to me, is forcing that burden on Giannis. And I'd said that this to me wasn't a great combination of having Turner and Giannis Antetokounmpo the same way that you had Brook Lopez and Giannis. I think that, to me, is where that's going to turn things to it in its head, because again, you're not addressing the elephant in the room of having at least a comparable swing man. Maybe they're still trying to figure that out with Kyle Kuzma, but that, to me, he's the key more than anything else. If Kyle Kuzma cannot be consistent on the court to give you like those Middleton type minutes and numbers, prior to Middleton's injuries and everything like that, then this was going to go sideways anyway. And again, I feel bad because the Milwaukee Bucks can just basically stumble themselves into that middle of the pack realm, because I think a lot of teams are going to come down to earth, and there's going to be a lot of load management for a lot of these teams. But the Ryan Hollins point, I think, to me, is a welcoming surprise, because at least now you're getting something, from what's not going to be a real good situation for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think what you said towards the end makes a lot of sense too. I think when you're comparing it to the rest of the conference, because like while JD indicated like, yeah, they are right now 11th as we record right now, who's below them really doesn't have any hopes of actually getting better. I don't think there's one of those teams right now from Charlotte, Indiana, Washington, and Brooklyn. None of those teams should make a foreseeable run at Milwaukee, even with an injured Giannis. So, and whether or not you think the Bostons of the world or whatever like that can really kind of hold on into that true playing lens, that's a lot to be kind of conversated about, in addition to obviously Toronto and some other teams that we need to discuss, Chicago, etc. But for me, like I can see them maybe getting back into this, but I'm just not comfortable where we stand right here today. So that's why I'm going to go with the abandoned ship and just knock them down a tier from where I had them to begin the season.
Any final thoughts on that, JD?
Bottom out. I'm sorry. Like if I'm Giannis, I'm looking at this roster. Shout out to Ryan Rollins. Like tremendous, start to the year. I hope you get it all year. Yeah. When Kyle Kuzma is in your top 4 conversation, stop it. Okay. And it's a Kyle Kuzma guy. Y'all know I love Kuz. Stop.
Oh man, we miss you so much, JD. We miss you so much, brother. All right, let's go ahead and shift our attention now to is it Toronto Raptors, Shaw, or the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, you got me all messed up.
I'm sorry, because I'm going by. I see that I see the way that you have it listed on our on our platform. Shout out to StreamYard. I see how you listed on it, and then I look at what we have outlined, and it looks different to me. So I don't know if I should be going by what we have listed in, or we should go by what's in our outline.
Always go by the outline. So I'll go ahead and lead us in here. We're going to talk about the Toronto Raptors. So the Toronto Raptors, in the Eastern Conference, somehow as we're recording, sit second, or I think tied for second in the East, at 11-5. And I won't say we gave ourselves some credit, but we gave ourselves some wiggle room, because we said this Raptors team has a lot of talent. And I don't know, or I said personally, it's like I didn't necessarily like the talent together. I was like, you have all these guys, but do they really mix match? And ironically, to me, I looked at the Raptors as almost basically the East Coast version of the Sacramento Kings. It's like, hey, these guys individually, hey, all right, maybe, but you can clearly see that this shouldn't work. Or for some damn reason in Toronto right now is working, and Coach Rakovich has them rocking and rolling. You never know who's going to be the lead guy. I think that's what a lot of people are saying. It's like Ingram is letting them, Barrett is letting them, Barnes is letting them at times as well too. Jakob Poeltl is just doing his screen assess thing when he's able to play. They're getting great production, and they're basically too deep. Everybody who comes in is production, from Jamal Shed to Grady Dick. Everybody's really hooping for the Toronto Raptors team. The question here now is, and I'm going to get my answer last, is, but do we talk ish here? And I'm going to kick it to UCL, because, again, remember, we had them as play-in worthy, but right now they're sitting as a damn contender in the Eastern Conference, which seems wild. So what are you going to do here? You're going to talk ish or abandon ship on your Raptors preseason prediction?
No, I'm not gonna abandon ship just yet, because again, this is the first quarter of the season. And listen, if you recall last year, we took a while before we came around to the idea about the Cleveland Cavaliers, of whether or not they were a real team just a season ago with the run that they made, right? Like, what we're saying is that what is it sustainable for them to dominate the Eastern Conference the way that they did, because we were still believing in the fact that the Boston Celtics essentially should be able to catch up with them or hang with them or whatever the case may be. And it essentially became a two-man race between the Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers last year. I think that the Cleveland Cavaliers, when fully healthy, will kind of elevate themselves. I see the New York Knicks probably figuring things out and being, an LA team. So I'm not going to sit here and just completely go off the rails and say, okay, the Toronto Raptors are, a viable contender per se. I will say, though, that they will surprisingly be a really, really good team, and we will see that whether that happens by the time we get to the midway point of the NBA season. Because the one thing I think, to your point earlier that you just said, is everybody is coming in and contributing, and you don't know who's going to be, the guy on any given night. And I just wonder whether or not that formula for success is sustainable when you do have to play the better teams, either in either of the conferences. Like, it's going to come down to, you're going to have to make sure that whoever your go-to guy is putting that ball in the basket when it counts and when it matters the most. And so we'll see what happens. So my whole thing is that I'm not completely abandoning ship, but I do like the fact that the Toronto Raptors are talking that ish about taking us seriously, if this is what Rakovich is getting out of the players that he has right now, because they're all showing us that there is a level of talent that we should be respectful of in the way that they're playing their game, and they're doing it unabashed.
All right, Jabari, what you got?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I don't know whether I'm abandoning ship or talking ish, but I guess I'm abandoning ship because I thought the Raptors at this point probably, be competitive, kind of like you said, comparing them to like a Sacramento, 8-8, maybe 9-7, if things were going well. But the fact that they're 11-5, look, I know it's still early in the season, but they're 7-3 on the road. That's a quarter of their road schedule. So if you can. I don't know whether it'll continue, but if you're already winning 70% of your road games and you're a young team like this, I would say you're definitely off on the right foot. Kind of to Warren's point, they're getting great contributions from everybody. I'm biased when it comes to BI. I was hopeful that it would work. I wasn't certain that it would work. It's working so far. Guys like Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, they're all playing well. And again, to Warren's point, they've got a bunch of dudes that just not only do they contribute, but it seems like they enjoy playing for one another and as well as with one another. Look, everyone in Toronto is cheesing, fam, and quite frankly, I'm here for it. Toronto's been taking the L's for the past 2 years in a lot of different ways. And you know what? More power to them. More power to them. Let them stay. Let them stay in this mix.
Yeah, we got to give Drake a reason to smile for a change, man.
He can stay where he's at. But the rest of Toronto.
So from my lens, and I'll just cut to the chase, where it's like, I'm going to abandon ship. I don't think this is the play-in team that I pegged them out to be. And there's rumors that they could even try to be buyers in the market now because things have gone as well as it is. I'm going to bump them up a tier. So I'm going to abandon ship as a play-in team. I think this is at least a middle of the pack team. I think they will come back to earth to some degree, but they're 5th in offense right now, but more importantly, 10th in defense. And well, that is maybe not as a surprise because they have, guys that are all kind of rangy and long, and especially when BI decides that he's going to try defensively, that makes whatever team he's on that much better. But for me, it's just the fact that they don't turn the ball over much. They're shooting high percentage in terms of three. They don't shoot a lot of them, but I think they're 5th overall in 3-point percentage or something like that. And this offense is really clicking with this kind of like committee approach. And I think at times you start to wonder, like, all right, can it really work? I still see BI as the lead guy, the guy that I would trust the most down the stretch. I think Quickly would like to take some of those moments just because that's the type of individual he is, the irrational confidence guy. But I like what's happening in Toronto right now. And if they go out here, and I'd be careful about shaking up this chemistry right now, but I'm going to abandon ship. And I think this is more of a middle of the pack team in the Eastern Conference.
Well, you see, and listen, final point, and then we'll move on to the next team, Shaw. But that to me, I think is the key. Like, I like the idea that this team is showing that they can be successful together. And there are just those times when we're having these kind of conversations. And in my head, I'm like, I wish I was sitting in the executive offices or in the general manager's office and being like, bro, don't mess this up. Like if your head coach has got these guys, even if you're saying they're overachieving and playing above their head, don't go out and get somebody that you think, quote unquote, is going to get them over the top. And what that does is actually get them rethinking about their flow, their ability, and then forcing the head coach to have to worry about another thing that he just finished putting this team in the best position possible to at least compete. And that to me is the part that scares me. So, it's kind of interesting that when we're saying talk ish or abandon ship about this, that my whole thing is I don't want to be talking too much ish because I like this team flying under the radar and doing the overachieving, because then you don't go out and get players that are going to mess up whatever it is that we enjoy seeing from this Toronto Raptors team.
6th in 3-point percentage. I had to go ahead and look up my stats here. 5th in 2-point percentage. And CL, you get a kick out of this. They're 2nd in assist. They're sharing the ball. So James Borrego in New Orleans should be looking to see what the hell the Raptors are doing.
Take that for identity.
Jabari, did you have a final thought there on the Raptors before you move on?
I was going to be silly. It was about Grady. It was mainly, like if he could take a step, if Dick could rise to the occasion, they could actually be. They could actually be something.
Put it back in your back pocket.
Easy, JD. Shaw's been very mindful about, you know what I'm saying.
It's interesting.
The brother is just being, you know what I'm saying, just feeling emboldened and confident to talk about any and anything that has got.
Anytime announcers they always say his first and last name because they know what it is. Like it's a little.
Everyone knows. Look, look, I'm a child. I'm in my mid 40s and I'm a child. But I actually wrote it in my notes. I was like, if Dick could rise to the occasion, there we are.
Fair. All right, we're gonna move on real quick.
When are we gonna get those roll reads? Now that's
let's keep it in the Eastern Conference. And now, since CL messed up our notes here, so I'm gonna go ahead and pivot on the run here. Orlando Magic. This is a team that started off really, really down and started to pick it up as of late. They are dealing with the Paulo Banchero injury, it seems, yet again. Right now, as we're recording, they're getting spanked by the Celtics. Don't know what the outcome of that game is ultimately going to be. But Orlando was a contender for us, CL. Like, this was a team that we're looking as a contender.
Who's us?
We did our thing initially.
Who said us? Who said us?
Us, yes, collectively. Remember, our rankings are a collective, collaborative between us and Dan Valley, and that is where we landed, the Orlando Magic. You, I'd say correctly, ascended the Detroit Pistons into the contender, which made the contender tier a little bit more.
Funny, I can't talk ish about that though.
You certainly can. But I think right now we're talking about the Orlando Magic right now, who are sitting really in the play-in range as opposed to the contender spot. Obviously, I'll kick it to you first, CL. Where do you think the Orlando Magic really are right now as compared to how they're performing today?
I'm not going to abandon ship on this team being somewhere in eventually being a contender. I think they're just too good for them not to be. I think Jamal Mosley is going to hold these guys accountable. I will say, though, if the team continues to struggle with the inconsistencies of their ability to play the kind of defense they played last year, I want to see Jamal Mosley step in on them real hard, because to me, that is always going to be the Orlando Magic's calling card, because this roster, again, is probably still going to need another year before we see the quote unquote offensive potency. So even if you're bringing me a Desmond Brain, that's great. And if he's still struggling to shoot the basketball, or you're getting, you're not getting clutch baskets from your tier guys like Wagner and Banchero like that, the very least, they need to stay within games, and that's because they play good defense. And if they're not doing that, then that's exactly the reason why it's easy for everybody to just abandon ship on this team. But like I said, give this conference time, right? Like all of the teams that were in top tier, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Orlando Magic, all of them have struggled. The New York Knicks have struggled out the gate. And if you can basically make the argument, with the exception of the Cleveland Cavaliers, new players added into the mix, you're going to see these guys come slow out of the gate. I think if they round out the shape, barring no injuries, they will round out to form. So I'm not going to abandon ship on the Orlando Magic, but it will elevate my ability to keep talking that ish about the Detroit Pistons and why they are where they are. So for those people who are now sleeping on how good the Pistons could potentially be, okay.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with both of you guys. I'm not abandoning ship. I had Orlando as a contender coming into the season. I still believe that they will be that. I'm not surprised that there were a little bit of, there were some growing pain situations at the beginning. You're trying to work in somebody that brings to the table what Desmond Bane brings to the table. There's going to be, you're gonna have to figure it out. It feels like they've settled, outside of whatever's taking place tonight against Boston. Shout out to your Celtics, for that. But it's weird.
Hey, we aim to please, baby.
Hey, no, go ahead.
JD, I was going to say, to throw into what you were talking about with that struggle, kind of likens back to when the Cleveland Cavaliers brought Donovan Mitchell onto that roster, and how long it took before things rounded into form for us to really take the Cleveland Cavaliers seriously because of him being added to that roster.
And to that same point, anytime you bring an influx of talent like that in, it's not just going to, it's very rare where it's just a hit the ground running type scenario. I still get this weird feeling that Orlando at some point is going to give us like a 16-4 run and differentiate themselves from the pack. But as long as you stay with the pack while you're figuring it out, you're still close enough to the driver's seat to where you can make some stuff happen.
Before I really dive into my Orlando overall analysis, I'm going to bring up one point and then, throw a question back to the both of you. So in the early first 5 games of the season, Orlando was like, I think, a bottom 3rd defense. They've already climbed their way back up to the top 6 right now. So like their defense is back to form. What's questionable is that they've done it without Paolo Banchero on the roster, with the injury kind of going on here now. So I'm not into the hyperbole and are they better off with Banchero, without Banchero? So, but I do want to ask a question. Does there need to be some role definement that takes place once Banchero comes back? And I don't know, like, what does that even really look like at this stage? Because they are playing literally better without him, at least than they did to start the season. But does that concern you? Maybe that's a better question. Does it concern you that they're playing better and finding their groove now without Banchero and Bane and Wagner kind of running things, the way that they have been? JD, I'll kick it back to you.
That's a really good question, and I think I'm not avoiding it, but I think it really depends on what the personalities are like in the room. Because like if you've got mature players, if you've got players that are willing to accept feedback, willing to make adjustments, for the betterment of the team, which it does seem like that group, like Jamal Mosley, and his crew have gotten that group to be, I think you're okay. If you have a group with fragile egos, or you have where someone is like still trying, and I'm not claiming that this is the case. I'm saying where you have to worry about, like him feeling left out, or him feeling like, these guys are asserting themselves in my absence. Well, then you obviously have problems that aren't going to be solved, anytime soon. I personally think, from the outside looking in, again, Orlando fans, your listeners here that are Orlando fans could answer this better than than I could, certainly. But it seems like they got a close knit group that it won't be an issue. I don't know. What do you think, Cal? Do you see any issues there?
I don't see any. I don't want to say I don't see any issues. I think it will raise some concerns on what the priority really is going to be for this team. Like, we just finished having a conversation about the Toronto Raptors and that this team seems to be gelling together, playing well together. They don't care really who's the top scorer on the team. There isn't a definitive role of who the guy is. I think it was very easy last year for us to say Paolo Banchero is the guy. Then they go out and make a trade and they get a guy like Desmond Bane, who you can make the argument last couple of years, he could easily have been one of the top scorers per se, if he's playing on a roster on a team that's going to allow him to eat like that. And here you're looking at an Orlando Magic team that's struggling offensively, where Desmond Bane could probably be a better scorer at times than Banchero, but Banchero has shown us he has the total package. He arguably could have the mismatch on a night in, night out basis. So I think it comes down to the priority about where does things balance out. If Banchero has to worry more about scoring the basketball than what he was giving you defensively for the Orlando Magic that made them a top 5 defense, that's going to be a concern, because I guarantee you, as we get to the playoffs and everything like that, it's going to come down to how well this Orlando Magic team collectively plays defense and stops the opposing team's better scorers, better players, right? They will eventually get better to score the basketball. But I think if they worry more about scoring the basketball, they will fall right back into the same trap that they fell into the very first 5-6 games of the season, which is trying to search for their offense, knowing that you got two guys who can really do score the basketball well, and you can flow through those guys, and it can work out as long as they keep that part of their game together.
Yeah, I think I slightly disagree, because I'm not worried about the defense because it has bounced back. And I think that Bane has the ability to, right now he's shooting 32% from three, which is like, I think a career low for him. Right now they are like 27th in 3-point per shooting. Like it's 21st in 3-point shooting. So not at all where they want it to be, although they're 16th overall in offensive rating. But the fact that Bane has not played reasonably well without Banchero, that's the rub for me. With Banchero, he has not played well. Without him, he's starting to find his groove a little bit and providing the outside touch and shooting that we thought he was going to kind of seamlessly fit in here with. So there's levels for Orlando to reach offensively. I'm not as concerned with the defense as that has seemed to have bounced back. Gogo Batazzi's even playing well for them, in that center spot. So that's something for me. But I guess my thing here is like, I'm with you both. I'm going to talk my ish on Orlando, and I feel like this is still going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference and still be one of the contenders there, especially if they can get everything back, everybody right and healthy.
Do you think, I just want to ask a quick question to the both of you. Do you think it's the style of play that is making things a little bit difficult? Because one of the things that we said in the beginning of the year, Shaw, and I thought would probably be a focal point, is having Banchero play more of a point forward, style. And that would kind of open things up for the Jalen Suggs, for the Desmond Baines, and for everybody else. And I know that they're really putting more emphasis on this game, on the offense really flowing to like Jalen Suggs being that guy. I'm not saying he's not capable. And by all accounts, looking, I was a little questionable about whether Suggs can be the guy. He's obviously proven that he definitely needs to be a part of the core of what's going on. But I just wonder if maybe that is part of that emphasis, so to speak, on the style of offense being played, where if you don't want Banchero going nuts on teams, maybe him playing that point forward and getting guys those opportunities so they can shoot more, better, and things of that nature will help.
I would have to dive more into the advanced statistics there, but just looking at the raw numbers, they have like 4 guys averaging like roughly 4 assists a game, right? And Banchero is one of them. So Banchero, Suggs, even Bane is into that space, and Wagner is just below at 3.9. So they're sharing the basketball per se, amongst those guys in terms of the ball distribution, but you need advanced statistics to really kind of see where that lands, because they're still like, in the bottom third when it comes to actual assists as a team. So it's very, very ball dominant. You don't know how those guys are actually being set up, and you can get those accidental assists, like kind of Russell Westbrook style, back in the day. Like, is it really, really impactful in the way that the Magic needed to be? And I just don't have enough information, or I haven't dove deep enough to kind of have that level of understanding. To me, and I'll say this last thing, when it comes to Banchero, I think this heard us on the show. Banchero in a lot of ways is like early Jason Tatum, with the ball in his hand and not always really knowing how to distribute it and get it off. Like, I think he's probably a little bit more advanced than early Jason Tatum, because Tatum really came in as like, I want to score and like pretty much like that's what I want to do. Banchero is like, oh, I can rebound or whatever. Like, I can do a little play creation, but he doesn't have right now, I think, the overall reps trying to find guys and understand what it means to get people in their proverbial spots. He's just kind of doing it off of raw talent alone right now. So I don't know if I fully buy into a point Banchero type of situation, but I think there's more levels for him to achieve, as a playmaker, and I think he will get there. I think he's that good for the Orlando Magic. Go ahead, JD.
And just one quick thing on it. In a weird way, and this ties to like the personality thing. In a weird way, a guy like Pablo, I feel like he can look back and see these guys and watch the way that they're playing for one another, and actually look for ways that he can improve upon when he returns. Where I like and look, this could totally just be me projecting, because I like it's just based on what I see from him. I don't see him as that type of selfish player that's worried about like, oh, I'm getting passed by. I see it as like, okay, what can I do to make this even better when I get back? And if you're Orlando, you have to hope that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw, special guest, JD, our man Jabari Davis joining us here. Coming up, Shaw and I, JD, we light into the second half of our coveted Talk-ish or Abandoned Ship. Don't miss it here on The Baseline.
You've earned this. Now it's time to embark on your own personal adventure. Book your vacation with exquisite travel and tours today. Explore the world and discover yourself.
We're back. Callie Warren Shaw, special guest Jabari Davis joining us here on The Baseline. Time to continue our conversation, Talk-ish or Abandoned Ship. Time for us to move to the West Coast. Out in your neck of the woods, JD, man. What are we talking about with the Phoenix Suns, man? The Phoenix Suns. Who knew? Listen, by all accounts, everybody had the Phoenix Suns like literally like as a lottery team. They are 4 games above 500 as we're recording this show, man. And I mean, I'm gonna throw it out to Shaw first. Do we continue to talk ish about the Phoenix Suns being a lottery team, or do we abandon ship on that sentiment?
Yeah, I'm begrudgingly going to have to, I guess, abandon ship. Sometimes a coach comes along and is able to figure some stuff out for a team. And then sometimes teams figure it out with a lack of expectations. Even we didn't talk about them, but like the Philadelphia 76ers, right? Like nobody really expects them to do anything. And here we go, they're doing all right. I think the Suns are doing more than all right now. Jordan Ott seems to know what the hell he's doing over there in Phoenix. Devin Booker is, looking like the player we always knew he is and has shown to be, I think, at times. But I think the Beal and Durant years were different. And now he's more or less like, hey, I'm the focal point. And then I heard this again. I listened to a lot of different content, and I thought this was so apropos. We talk a lot of times that coaches have shelf lives, and players do too, or their impacts. Chris Paul is one of those guys. Like he's got a shelf life, and then it kind of runs its course. Dillon Brooks is starting to become that type of player. Like what he did in Memphis initially, and then what he did in Houston to some degree. I hate the term cultural setter or whatever it is, but he makes an impact. And teams for players seem to rally around some of that too. So that irritant style gets on other people's nerves, but it's great. It's galvanizing when you have them on your roster, so to speak. And they've done all this without Jalen Green, who's dealing with a hamstring injury and is still, another 4 or 5 weeks before he's ultimately going to be back. And with a center rotation that many of us laughed at going into the season. So to me, this is all a semblance of how Jordan Ott has these guys playing, getting contributions across the board as well too. Grayson Allen has had a spectacular season to date. So I'm going to abandon ship on the Phoenix Suns as a lottery team. And I don't know if they'll be this good, but I think they're going to be heard from, and at least will be a play-in team throughout the course of this regular season. JD, I'll kick it to you.
No, I'm right there with you, and I hate it when I like to be able to say like, nah, I don't, I like to disagree sometimes, but the reality is this: the Phoenix Suns, and okay, you know what? I'll disagree with my earlier take because I 100% had the Phoenix Suns in the lottery. I was wondering what it would look like in the aftermath of KD and Bradley Beal, and quite frankly, sometimes it's a matter of that simply didn't work, and I'm not saying that they were malcontents. Even though we did see plenty evidence that looked that way, last year. But I will say is sometimes when you get a certain vibe out of the mix, things just, things can kind of clarify, or things, things can become more clear. Yeah. I will give Dillon Brooks his props. And quite frankly, you know what, Memphis fans, y'all just gonna be mad at me today. Your organization hasn't been the same since you scapegoated him and jettisoned him the hell up out of there. Your organization has not been the same since then. You are 100% right. He is a vibe setter. He is a guy that, for whatever the reason, when you play with him, you seem to love him, and when you play against him, you hate him. And quite frankly, on my team, I want players like that. I feel like I need players like that on the wall. And same thing with a guy like Grayson Allen. You're like, look, I'm not talking about guys that I love like as individual players, but they are the type of guys that you want on your squad. And the Suns have a lot of those guys. They're getting good minutes from everybody that you mentioned, getting good minutes from Ryan Dunn. And like you said, Jalen Green's only played 2 games. The Suns are going to look. All right, you know what? Let me pivot to you, Cal. Do you think they might actually be buyers at the deadline given this early success?
Ooh.
Yeah, I can see them being buyers, but let me thank you for bringing us Venom Devin Shaw. I told you this. I was like, the greatest addition for the Phoenix Suns was subtraction. Stop putting players next to Devin Booker who was not accentuating what Chris Paul inoculated in that boy. That kid is a menace. That kid is born to score the basketball. He's not born to sit here and pacify himself to be delivering. Yes, Grayson Allen and all of the complementary pieces are scoring, and that's helping them. But at the end of the day, Venom Devin and Dylan the Villain is what's setting the tenor and tone for where the Phoenix Suns are. And I am all here for it. You know what I'm saying? Because that kind of level of aggressiveness, even if it's the level of hatred that people speak to, that's what keeps teams feeling uncomfortable when you play the Phoenix Suns. You know what I'm saying? And so that to me I think is one of the most important things. This team is quite balanced, and they could probably play at a faster pace. There's probably a lot of things that they can do well, and they're leaving themselves open if they're going to maintain the way that they're playing. Eventually, if they do get Jalen Green back, where they can basically look to bring somebody on there, but you don't bring somebody on there that's going to stymie what you're getting from this version of Devin Booker. You're not going to bring someone that's going to stymie the contributions that you're getting from Grayson Allen, what you may possibly get from, you know what I'm saying? Do not do something to completely upset the apple cart. But clearly, as of right now, they are not a lottery team. This team plays with way too much nasty and too much tenacity to not be in the conversation of at least playoff, definitely above play-in level. It's hard to see this team just completely falling off the rails. I think there's way too much upside for what you're getting, as long as you're getting this version of what the Phoenix Suns brings to the table.
Yeah, again, I'm going to go back, and I do need to do some more watching on Jordan Ott's overall schemes to kind of understand why it's as successful as it is. I'm probably maybe not as high on them being the 8th rated offense for the majority part of the season. If they're a top 10 offense, then especially in this, juice ball era of NBA basketball, like you look at the names, it doesn't really make sense. Like, Booker's dope and all, but Dylan Brooks and Grayson Allen, Gillespie and like, come on, bro. Like this, an 8th rated offense, it seems they're fighting above their station slightly.
There's something in the cactus. It's something in the cactus water.
Yeah, I don't know. That I'm a little dubious about, but ultimately, this is a team that we had to put some respect more on their name because they are doing this at a level that we did not anticipate. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to be wrong about these types of things. And somewhere Matt Ishbia is over there, laughing at everybody, for whatever that's worth. So shout out to the Phoenix Suns, man. Hopefully,
hey JD, man, I love what you said about the Memphis Grizzlies organization. You know what I'm saying? Being wrong since they ghosted Dylan Brooks. You know what that reminds me of? Reminds me of what the Memphis Grizzlies did to Tony Allen.
Ooh, hey, I mean, look.
Listen, man, they're just some players that it is worth keeping them, not just quote unquote for the culture, but it's also for the mindset of the guys that, you know what I'm saying, you play with and gravitate to. Like some key players don't like the idea of you offing or moving someone who has had an impact on their success. It's kind of like being superstitious. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you messing with my, you know what I'm saying, with my Ouija board? You know what I mean? By doing what you're doing. It's like, I think that what I give the organization and the team itself, you can at least give me this. And organizations don't think in that context until it actually starts impacting them, a month from now, 2 months from now, or a season.
I'll say the quiet part. And you know what? Again, whatever. He got jettisoned from Memphis because they were protecting somebody else. It was easier to point the finger at him and say, like, look what he did. He did that stupid thing in the game, and that's what the reality was.
And I was one of those guys who was just like, yo, man, you got to get rid of him if he is going to be counterintuitive to the overall maturity that the team needs to be successful. You know what I'm saying? And I think this to me is another statement for the Phoenix Suns to say this team is Devin Booker's team. So if you really buy into Devin Booker being the guy, stop putting players around him that he's not going to vibe with, that he can't help elevate or will help elevate him to a degree where you're seeing what you're seeing on a night in, night out basis.
Well, Booker has a lot of similarities to Dylan. It's just not as, I guess, boisterous, but Devin Booker's gotten under many a player's skin before.
Yeah.
So I can see a kinship growing there. And then it would kind of lead me to believe, while Jalen Green hasn't really been a part of this, like, then if you're having this level of success, as you alluded to, CL, talking about trades, then do you need him, right? Like, and is he the guy that you could potentially try to move to try to add whatever accelerant on this that you need to? And Green probably does want to go somewhere where he can be a pseudo lead guy. Like if you swap jobs like Jalen Green and put him in Michael Porter Jr. spot in Brooklyn right now, you know what I mean? Again, with health, obviously, you know, Jalen Green like, yes, you know what I mean? Let me show y'all boys what I can really do if it's my team. Now, obviously he's not leading to any winning, but Michael Porter is very, very happy man right now. So I think Jalen Green would be in a very, very similar situation if he had a team where he could truly captain his own ship.
Can I just say something quickly? This is apropos of nothing. I've been seeing Lakers folks doing those mock trades and putting Michael Porter Jr. in a Lakers uniform. Can I just say, shut up? We don't need stop it. If I could roll up a newspaper right now and smack you on the head, that's what I would do. Get the hell out of here with that nonsense. Shout out to our guy Tyler. He picked his guy Devin to lead the league in scoring this year. Devin Booker.
Absolutely. You're tuned to the baseline. Cali Warshard, Jabari Davis discussing hot button topics of the NBA. All right, let's slide things forward to the Rookie of the Year conversation, in which we were talking about this was Cooper Flagg's Roy to lose. And boy, man, Cooper making it tough for a brother to be to keep talking that ish, man. I'm telling you right now. But I'm gonna have you weigh in on this, Jabari, because I think it's interesting that is it more on Cooper Flagg or is it more on Jason Kidd and how he is really utilizing Cooper Flagg that's forcing us to abandon our own ship of us having high praise for this kid. You know what I'm saying? What are we talking about here with Cooper Flagg? Are we raising the white flag on Cooper Flagg?
No, definitely not raising the white flag.
That's crazy.
What I will say is this: sometimes it's a multiple things can be true. It's a confluence of things. Yes, part of it is how it's being used. Part of it is the circumstance. AD not being available, Kyrie obviously not being available to this point in the season. Bringing in D'Lo, thinking that he was going to be somewhat of a lead playmaker. Like we haven't heard that song over and over and over again. I'm not gonna shade D'Lo, but quite frankly, if you're looking at him to be your primary playmaker, you're not going to be a very good basketball team. So I say all of that to say, shout out, shout out to Warren here, because he initially was very heavy on Con Knipple, as his probable Rookie of the Year. He may have settled on somebody else, but you know what? I have selective memory here, and I'm going to say I heard him say Con Knipple. But the reality is this: Con Knipple, we're giving him all this credit. He's averaging 17.5 points a game. He's giving the Hornets 6 boards, just under 3 assists. Even with these circumstances, even with it looking somewhat disappointing in the early going with Cooper Flagg, quite frankly, he's still giving you 15, 6, and 3. And what I personally think is going to take place is it's going to look ugly until it doesn't. And I'm not saying in the second half of the year he's just going to start dominating, but I do think that if you continue to give him these reps, you continue to put him in these situations, and then they get a guy like Kyrie back, and then they either get AD back or they move him on and they get in some playable talent. I think it's going to look like what we anticipated. And quite frankly, I'm gonna stick to my guns. I think Cooper Flagg is going to run away with this by the end of this, and we're going to look back on these times and say like, oh well, that was a good start for those other rookies.
I would tend to agree with you, honestly. I've gone back and forth, and while I wouldn't say I'm a Khan fan. I think I'm a fan of his opportunity. And, we'll talk about players who might get moved now, and Khan has somebody on his team who might get moved now that could really open up things for him. So save that happening. Khan should probably be a second or third vote getter when it comes to rookie of the year when all is said and done. However, the guy that I do think is really interesting, and they all have ties to Cooper Flagg. Khan obviously played with him at Duke. Derek Queen, I think, played with them in high school. Derek Queen is hooping, and while despite New Orleans not knowing what the hell they're really doing in terms of an organization, they know, well, we got to play this rookie, and he's going out here, and I don't know what comparison you want to utilize. I don't know if there's anything like statistically though. He's putting up, like, he said Şengün is baby Jokic. He's now starting to look like baby Şengün. I think in terms of what he's able to do, especially with the play creation and just his overall feel for the game. I like Derek Queen, and I can see why Joe D did what he did in theory, not to do it that way. But I understand why they were high on him in terms of, his overall, ceiling as a basketball player. I'm going to stick to my guns, though. I think Cooper, what we're seeing now is probably the floor, especially because of the circumstances. And, as long, I know we have rookie walls and all of that, but I think Cooper's actually going to accelerate into especially when he sees it and has more help. I think his numbers and efficiency is going to climb in a way that we're like, all right, well, yeah, this is what we expected to begin with. VJ Edgecombe starting to slack off just a little bit, even with Embiid out, Paul George is now back. So that's going to impact his ability to kind of get touches. Jeremiah Fears, I think, is, he's not really in the race for this, whatever like that too, but he's on Derek Queen's team. So to me, I think Cooper's going to go ahead and hold on to this thing. CL, your thoughts here, talking ish or abandon ship on Cooper Flagg Rookie of the Year?
I'm not gonna abandon ship, but I'm not gonna talk shit. Yeah. But I will say this. I, in a way, from a conspiracy theory standpoint, am ecstatic that Cooper Flagg is going through the struggles that he's going through while still being in striking distance, or if anything, still barely leading, right? Because now it is opening up the window for us to pay attention to all of these rookies. And all of them are taking the baton and they're running with it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like when you're watching a track meet, right? And everybody is always paying attention to Jamaica and paying attention to the United States. And then here comes Barbados. Here comes, you know what I'm saying, Netherlands. Some team out of the blue comes out and makes us take notice. Canada makes us watch and pay attention to, hey, this class of rookies actually collectively are all in a good position to see some longevity and there be upside and contributions. So in a way, while I'm not abandoning ship on the idea that Cooper Flagg will wind up being the Rookie of the Year, I love the fact that the Derek Queens, the Conca Nipples, the Spheres, all VJ Edgecombes, all of them are contributing. They're getting a window of space for people to pay attention to them, because I think they're going to be highly, highly, highly important as we move further into the season, looking at in totality how deep this draft class truly is and how some of these guys are going to actually be put in critical situations that's going to help elevate or probably diminish their teams.
Cal, that's a really good point, and I hadn't even actually thought about it. If Cooper Flagg comes out and he's averaging 20, 10, and 8, or something, or crazy numbers or whatever, I'm not saying we completely ignore the other rookies, but I'm certainly not paying attention to them as much, because if they're not playing on good teams, they're not playing winning basketball, I would just be more of the lines of, well, somebody's got to put up points for those bad teams. And maybe that's dismissive and wrong on my part, but I'm admitting to you, if Cooper Flagg were absolutely dominant, I would not be as tapped in with the other rookies, with a lot of the other rookies. So.
Yeah, and I think the last point for me is just, even a guy like Cedric Howard in Memphis, we've talked a lot about the Grizzlies here too. He's actually second on the NBA's rookie of the ladder right now. And somebody who can, I don't want to say be a building block, but is obviously going to be a big part of the future in Memphis. And, his story is really interesting. And as somebody whose story is as interesting as it is, it's even more so now he's making a run here as a Rookie of the Year candidate. After being somebody, I think he would have played like 6 games in college, and they were like, you know what, we're going to take that. So Memphis, for all the things they get wrong, they do a decent job scouting guys. Now it's a matter, can they keep them healthy, and keep them on the upward trajectory. But anyway, Cooper Flagg, man, much more competition than he would have expected, I think, at this point. But I think like I said, I think we're seeing the floor of where he's ultimately going to be this season.
Absolutely. All right. So now our final take for Talkish and Abandoned Ship is to what you were just alluding to a few moments ago, Shaw, as far as who do we think is likely to be moved, the biggest name to be moved. And I'm going to start with you, JD. Your take of that guy that is going to be moved. I know with me, I had said earlier, I think it was going to be Giannis. I am now going to have to abandon ship on that. So you'll have to find out who that going to be. But want to hear from you on who you think it going to be.
I mean, anybody that's listening to this episode, they can probably tell. I came into the year saying that it was going to be LaMelo and Giannis. I stand by that. Now, go ahead and throw John to that mix. Matter of fact, go ahead and throw Zion to that mix. And with those last two, quite frankly, I think if their respective teams could get a deal where they're not losing out, and they could and they could at least set themselves up for their next move, I think those moves would be done this year. So is it likely that all four of those big names are going to be moved? No, but I do think that there's an absolute possibility because, quite frankly, they should be looking to move all of those names.
So my pick, not necessarily safe, but I think it was more logical. And I thought Lauri Markkanen would probably be the biggest name that actually got moved because of where Utah was, decent contract, can fit in pretty much any scheme or system. And it just seemed like, all right, Utah will finally like this, and we need to totally bottom out. Little did I know, or I did know, but just wasn't taken into account that our NBA was going to be as dramatic as it is. We're going to have all the Ja Morant stuff and LaMelo rumor that I guess he's trying to squash, but now, smoke or fire type of situation, and all the stuff that happened in New Orleans as well. Like I can see all of those situations. So I'm going to abandon ship. I may not have a prediction in terms of who that person will be, but I think a name bigger than Lauri Markkanen is probably most likely going to be on the move here before the trade deadline, and that's going to definitely shake up the NBA. And I think I'd be most interested if it was LaMelo and Zion. I think Ja doesn't have enough cachet right now. Like he's too light in the ass when it comes to a reputation that people would want to really buy into. I agree with Jabari said earlier. Like, somebody could always kind of convince themselves, but Memphis having to sell pennies on the dollar right now, that I don't think as an organization they would be willing to do. They'd rather try to see what they can extrapolate maybe in the offseason. Unless he comes back and looks amazing, then maybe but right now, I think in terms of cachet, some of those other names make a little bit more sense in terms of teams having interest in trying to convince themselves to make a move. See ya?
Yeah, I'm just going to go on the crazy side of things just to make it interesting for everybody. And I'm just going to probably throw it out there that if the Memphis Grizzlies are really looking to try and send a statement with how they want this team to look, they may probably move Jaren Jackson Jr. before they move Ja Morant. I know that they have to wait until January, but I'm telling you this right now, the Memphis Grizzlies can ill afford to not really think long-term about what they can get as far as assets go. And Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably the best player who is contributing, who is on the basketball court, and arguably has a better resume to kind of work with other organizations who clearly need a front court player if they're trying to make a true run. So, you can eliminate some teams that already got their front court set. But for those that probably would love to get a guy that can space out, shoot the three, was a former defensive player of the year, even though you don't really see that, you know what I'm saying? And as a guy you could just kind of put in there, he doesn't really upset the apple cart with what you probably already have from your backcourt. That kind of guy, you could probably see an organization giving up a lot more than to be wondering about what they're going to get if they were to trade for a LaMelo Ball or trade for a Ja Morant. And it's ironic because I switched from saying Giannis, which would clearly be like people are giving up a king's ransom. I don't think it's too far-fetched if the idea that the price is right for the Memphis Grizzlies, that they strike while the iron's hot on a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., not because I don't think Jaren Jackson Jr. is not a great player for Memphis or whatever, but you can't have him and Ja Morant on this roster any longer thinking that something is going to work. And if you don't know that you're going to plan to move Ja Morant, then what are you doing with Jaren Jackson Jr. if you allow him to continue to struggle with the roster that you currently have structured right now?
I think that's an excellent. Sorry, Warren. Just quickly, I think that's an excellent point on Triple J specifically because he is you would imagine he's the easier piece to move. I can't disagree with that at all. Let me ask you this, Warren, because I'm trying to force the issue. Is it possible a LaMelo for Ja move works for both of those teams?
Possible. I mean, I think numbers wise, it does work. Without looking at the trade machine. Charles Lee's appetite to kind of take on, one mercurial point guard for another, that'd be interesting, right? I just know. And then even the injury history is like, all right, well, did we just swap problems for each other, ultimately? So I don't know if those two teams would be enticed to make a move like that, because I think they're just like, well, I'd rather know the devil I know type of situation. But there's all types of, names and players and teams that, could be interested, in something like that. And when it comes to other players who could be moved, we can't forget about like a Sabonis. He could be a big name that could ultimately get moved as well. The Clippers, rumor has it that, hey, they wouldn't mind getting out of the Kawhi business, but who's going to do that? I mean, yeah, he has a cachet, but he also has a cachet of all the baggage that comes alongside him and having to, just basically throw your franchise into kind of disarray to accommodate whatever he has got going on and his, Uncle Dennis and the whole nine. But those are all big names that I think we're going to start to hear about, which is going to make this NBA season that much more interesting, because while it might be becoming more clear that OKC is the team to beat, like truly, there are other teams that's not going to stop teams from trying and saying like, all right, well, they turn an ankle. You know what? Hey, maybe this could be our year, because the rest of it really is wide open. And I think some big names are going to start to fly. Watch for Miami to get involved. Tyler Hero's about.
I was going to say, do you think Miami would love to roll the dice in getting them a Ja Morant on their roster with the pieces that they have to potentially give up?
Yeah, and so I've had a lot of conversations about John Morant in the early weeks of this NBA season. Our label mate Gerald, said on Sirius XM, he's like, "Oh, what about Atlanta?" I was like, "All right," and I'll tell you the same thing. I said, if John Morant is having problems in Memphis, do you know what the city of Atlanta is like? And I was like, so I was like, I don't know if I would do that. I live in South Florida. You know what the city of South Florida and Miami is like? Despite all their branding of culture and the whole nine, I don't know that is something that I'd want to take on if I'm Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and just like, all right, let me see our culture. Yeah, we can get them right. Miami's Miami. There's all types of stuff to get into. So I don't know about that, but I think Miami's going to sniff around in terms of players that might be able to improve their roster. They have this new Memphis offense that they instilled last year, and that's how they're scoring a bunch of points. Everyone's sharing the damn basketball. It's wow. This season is apocalyptic in terms of the storylines that have come about, and I think all the names that can ultimately move. But Miami will absolutely be a team that kicks the tires on a couple of different players. Go ahead, Jabari.
Funny enough, that was the Ja side of it is the reason why I even recommended the Hornets, because it's 200 miles. It's less than 200 miles from his hometown. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad. I'm looking at like, it's got to be a special situation. Maybe John needs to go to Utah, somewhere like somewhere like that. Go to Indianapolis.
They need a professional basketball team from Wichita.
Hey, send him to the Pacers. That's not. Wait, how
that's
close
what we're
is
getting to.
Gary? Wait, maybe not.
Stranger things.
Yeah.
Big facts. And the last thing I'll say is that, Houston seems to be doing fine. But, you can watch that Fred VanVleet situation if they feel like they need to do something and then bring in a point guard. I don't think it'd be a Ja or LaMelo type of situation. But, they might make a move, to try to solidify their title hopes right now. And then just try to smooth it over, from a PR lens with Fred VanVleet if need be. But I think we are going to be assured that some big name is going to be moved. It could be any one of the guys we've spoken about, in addition to maybe some others that we're not even thinking about, especially coming off the Lucas stuff from last year. Like, who knows what's going to happen in our fine NBA?
Absolutely, man. And listen, this is why we really enjoy doing this particular show, especially now at this juncture. I think if we waited any longer, we would have passed on some really interesting perspective to bring to the table, given the climate of what's been taking place over the last few weeks And, again, we're just barely past the first quarter of the NBA season, and already all of this is taking place. So, this has been awesome altogether, because I think it's going to keep our eyes peeled for what's really going to happen. I think by the time we get to the midway point, we're going to see how a lot of things, shake out. Like, teams that we potentially are talking about, they're going to need to make a move if they want to continue to maintain or elevate themselves. And then you're going to see the teams who clearly this is their time, this is their opportunity to really kind of figure out what can we sell and what can we get in return, and what can we eventually build from there moving forward, what the future is going to look like. So yeah, man, this has been awesome stuff, man. I love the energy that we brought to the table in this conversation today.
Okay. Couldn't agree more. Keep an eye on those dates. Obviously, December 15th, January 15th, contracts get signed, it can be moved, et cetera, et cetera. Trade rumors will start to happen, obviously, ahead of that. But yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting. And yeah, 1 month into the season, we kind of have a good sense, right? 15 games, 16 games, like this is reasonably the identity of this team, saving injuries, right? And we have talked about some teams into that space, but we have a good sense. So I think it's a great time to give us our mulligan or stand on business. And I think we did a mixture of both things, depending on the topics at hand here. Jabari, anything that you're working on, man, plug yourself, brother, before we get up out of here.
No, I mean, you know how it goes. I'm behind the scenes on everything. Got a new soccer show coming out on iHeart called Ain't It Footy. I know, and look, quite frankly, I'm beyond my depths here, but it's a great set of guys. I'm back with with Miles. I'll actually leave it as a surprise for some of the other folks that are involved with the show. Kev on stage, do a good show with him called Not My Best Moment. If you like comedians, you like real conversations, you like or actors, comedians, authors, whatever, just great folks. Definitely recommend.
He did his first show with Issa Rae, was it not?
Yes, that was the first one that was released. Got some, got Spice Adams coming up. Got there's a lot of funny. Like, I'll be honest with you, it might be my favorite show that I'm doing right now. I mean, obviously outside of the appearances that I make on this show, and then obviously shout out to our 19 guys, our 19 family, Jameson and Luis, and the Mixed Company podcast. Love working with those guys behind the scenes. Love representing once again for 19 Media Group, and love being back in the mix with you guys.
Absolutely, man. And as always, man, we love you. You know what I'm saying? Jumping on board with us. And we can't wait for you to get up on the next go round, man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm ready for it.
That's how family rolls, baby. You know what I'm saying? You gotta wait for the holidays. You know what I'm saying?
Funny enough, that's the time I'll be on.
Absolutely. So we'd like to thank each and every single one of y'all for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw, and our special guest, Jabari Davis, our brother JD. Once again, we appreciate you guys, each and every single one of you, and we'll catch up with you next time.